Hello and salam, everyone. My name is Najma Osman, and I am the policy associate at KYR Washington, where I lead our policy work as an organization. I am here today with a special guest, Edmund Witter from the King County Bar Association, as a part of our Housing Know Your Rights campaign interview series. And the goal of the campaign today is to provide entry-level housing rights information to our community members about their rights in Washington state. So to start off, Edmund, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. My name is Edmund Witter. So I'm the managing attorney of the Housing Justice Project, which is part of the King County Bar Association. The main thing we do is provide defense to tenants who are facing eviction in King County. We do some other work across the state as well. That's the main thing we focus on, is helping tenants stay housed.
And what are the services that the King County Housing Justice Project offer that people should know about? And how can people access these services?
So the main thing that we do, like I said, is that we provide legal representation to tenants who are facing eviction. And with that comes some other services as well. But the main thing that we do is focus on helping people who are facing eviction. So that generally means that you have to have an active eviction court case. So you've gotten something like a summons, which is a formal court paper that will say Superior Court of King County on the top of it. It'll have a court date or response date on it. It'll be very formal looking. When you get that type of paperwork, that's when we can help you out. The main way that people tend to access our services is either by emailing us at hjpstaff@kcba.org or calling our hotline, which is currently 206-267-7069. And you can actually get all that information by going to housingjusticeproject.org, which has some ways to access our services right at the bottom there, including that email, a form that you can fill out, as well as the phone number as well. But like I said, we mostly focus on helping people who are already in an active eviction case, sometimes people who've been illegally locked out as well. If you maybe fell behind on your rent, we will eventually be able to help you out, but we really tend to focus on people who are in that sort of last minute crisis. There's a lot of people who are in that last minute crisis, and we really have to direct our attention to that and prioritize that before we can really start helping people who are early on in the process.
And from your experience, what are some of the most common misconceptions you've seen people face in regards to their housing rights?
Well, one of them is when you're behind on your rent, that your landlord can just lock you out. So before anybody can lock you out, a landlord has to get an actual court order to be able to do that. So that's something signed by a judge that has basically said, yes, you, the tenant, owe the landlord money, or the landlord's in the right, or you've done something wrong. The landlord cannot just change the locks and throw you out. Unfortunately, we do see that happen a lot, but we also see what more common is a landlord threatening to do that, and that's enough to get the tenant to leave, because they think that if they haven't paid their rent on the first, that on the second, the landlord can come in with their friends, take all your belongings, put them out on the street, or auction them off, and you'll be out without a home. It's a little bit of a longer process than that. There's a lot of paperwork involved before the landlord can really do that. But I think the one big thing that we tend to see is a lot of people who just leave their homes, despite the fact that there might be able to something you can do, or maybe some protections that apply to you, but they leave because they're not aware that there actually is a formal legal judicial process that the landlord has to go through before they can actually remove a tenant. So I think that's like the very first thing. The second thing too is that when it comes to repair issues, that you do have a general code of conduct that the landlord is supposed to provide you or abide by, that they're supposed to be providing you with essential services. When those things are not provided, like your oven's broken, your ceiling's caving in, there's a lot of things you can do. Unfortunately, some of the state laws are really hard to navigate. And it's possible to even withhold your rent, but it's a little bit of a delicate issue. So it's one thing that, sometimes we'll see a tenant who, their oven's broken, they withhold all the rent, they don't pay anything, and that can ultimately get you into trouble. But you do have a right to be able to withhold some of it. So I think one thing that's actually pretty important is that you talk to an attorney when you do have those kind of repair issues, and something that needs to be addressed pretty imminently. I think the last thing too that I think people are unaware of but have an expectation of is there's no rent control in Washington. I mean, one thing that we tend to see a lot right now is about really high rent increases. I mean, the average rent increase that we're seeing among our clients is about 20% right now, and it's a huge amount. It's about $250 per household on average. Because the state legislature has barred every single city and has not itself provided any type of control or regulation of rents, there is no real control over it. There's your landlord's supposed to give you, specific notice. It's actually a little bit longer in some cities than others about how long it has to be. But generally, landlord has to give you about 60 days notice at least before they raise the rent, but they can raise it as much as they want. I mean, this has been a big issue. I think I've seen a lot of tenants who think they have rent control, but we don't. That's a bigger legislative push and a bigger policy push that still is being made at the statewide level. But I think it's a big thing that is needed, but also not been addressed yet.
Awesome. And I believe you kind of already touched on this, but if there are, three things that you think every renter in Washington state should know and take from this conversation, what do you think that should be?